Hey everyone, welcome to episode 9 of the Miami Tech Pod. I'm Cesar Fernandez, and as always, I am joined by the Miami Pod Squad, Brian Breslin, Maria Durkee, and Will Weinrob. And we have a special guest with us today, Abramzon, the co-founder of one of the hottest ed tech startups in Miami that may have a little news. We'll see, NearPod, of course. But first, how's everyone doing? Maria?
Good. It's a beautiful Friday afternoon, so I can't be wrong.
Yeah, I am excited to relax this weekend. I don't know about you all.
Definitely looking forward to the weekend. It's been a long, exciting week, though.
Wonderful. Well, Emmy, welcome to the Miami Tech Pod. How are you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. The four of us are really familiar with NearPod. I mean, it's one of the real success stories of the Miami technology community. But why don't you tell our listeners a little bit, for the few that don't know, what is NearPod? What have you all built? What value do you provide to the world? And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, we started NearPod with the notion of helping teachers engage students in the classroom. Before creating NearPod, we were a software services company for the publishing industry. We were helping publishers convert their content from physical to digital. And then in 2011, when the tablets started to come out to the market, the iPad was the first one. We were asked to do apps for those tablets and iPads, and then we started to go to classrooms to see how the technology has been used. And we learned that the students were isolated, reading the tablets without any interaction with the teachers and any interaction with other peers. So we decided that we wanted to create a technology that will allow the teachers to communicate more with the students through the devices, and then allow the students to collaborate with other students with the devices. So the assumption was devices are here to stay. Devices are going to come down in price. They're going to be in the hands of every student. We better provide a technology that will allow the teachers to keep the students engaged. So we created NearPod here in Miami. This was around 2012. We asked some friend schools. For example, the first pilot was in my son's school. My son was in pre-K4 at that time. And by the way, it took me about 3 months to convince the teacher and the principal to do a pilot in one classroom, because nobody knew what we were doing, and we were taking kids' time and with new technology. So at the beginning, everybody was very skeptical. But the moment that we started the pilots, we realized that we were into something big. And there's a foundational phrase in NearPod. It is in Spanish, but it's called "Acá hay algo." It means there's something huge here, because every time we were coming out of a pilot, we would see the reaction from teachers and students, and it was not normal. The teachers would come and say, "This is the best thing I've ever seen in education. This is going to change education," because what we learned, and we didn't know this coming in, but in a typical class, the students raise their hand and participate once a class, or the teacher call them out once a class. With NearPod, if everyone has a device and they can answer the question on the device in real time, the teacher gets the answer, then the students start to participate 100% of the times. And the number one reason why the students don't participate more is because they are afraid of being exposed. When the teachers are the only ones seeing the answers, then the students are more inclined to participate because they are in a safe environment. So all of a sudden, the teachers were getting a ton of questions from students that never spoke in class, or they will understand at the end of the class how the students were learning. And the teachers will come to us and say, "I had to wait 2 months prior to take a test, and the test was multiple choice. And sometimes I don't understand if the students are learning or not." So that type of reactions. And then schools like Pinecrest, American Heritage, Immaculata La Salle, or Miami schools allow us to go in and take students' time and teachers' time and allow us to test our product. And that was the first validation that we were into something big. Then, please stop me if I am speaking too much. But then the story goes on. We were sure that we had a winner, and with some consulting background that we had and a prior exit, we knew that we could go and put together a deck. And with a pilot and everything, we thought it's easy. We're going to raise money and we're going to create a big company. So with that, we went to Silicon Valley to raise money, and we failed. For a while, we couldn't raise money because what investors would say is, it's very, very hard to penetrate schools and districts. Selling to a district will take 24 months. And at a startup growing at a higher pace, we don't have that time to waste. B, you are a startup out of Miami. How are you going to build credibility to sell to a district in Texas or California or in the Northeast?
If they only knew, fast forward eight years later, what would happen?
Exactly. So what that helped us to do is we learned the lesson, and we had the assumption that we cannot sell to districts. But at the same time, we had that reaction from all the teachers that saw the platform. So we decided to put the platform for free. And we said, we put it in the cloud. And if the teachers really, really love the platform, they're going to start talking about it. And then we're going to sell to principals because the teachers are already using it. So we put the platform for free. And then that was the beginning of the hyper growth. In a few months, we got 100,000 teachers. The reviews were amazing. Apple selected us as one of the best apps for education. Google selected us as one of the best apps for education. So at that time, a few of the investors would call back and say, we're looking at your traction. It's all free, but it seems like everybody loves what you're doing. Here's some money. And the first investor is Reach Capital. At that time, it was New Schools Venture. They want to help education. Their main goal is to help education, and they know a ton about education. So they led our seed round and then the Series A, and that helped us a lot. That opened a ton of doors. And with that money from seed and Series A, we started to play with a paid version. And then, because knowing that we cannot sell to districts, what we did is we said, okay, we're going to sell to principals. So we never, walked the door of a district. We created an inside sales team over the phone, selling to the heavy users and seeing if a principal can pay a low fee, annual fee. And all we wanted to test is the pricing elasticity and how much a principal can spend. But again, surprisingly enough, we were selling at an incredibly high pace for education. We will convert a lead in 45 days, 30 days, 60 days. And very soon we onboarded hundreds of schools and then thousands. And the pace was not normal for a company selling to education. So that also opened a ton of eyes.
Let me ask you something. Yeah. After nearly a decade in this space, what's one lesson that you wish you had known when you started, or rather, if you want to reframe it, what's something you thought you knew when you started this that you've since changed your mind on sort of the ed tech space?
Well, we learned as we did it. So none of the founders came from education. Mm-hmm. We soon realized that we needed a lot of people from education, and we hired a lot of people from the industry. But we didn't know anything about the teaching community, which is amazing. We came to love the teachers. The teachers are, what we claim in our website many years ago, that they do the most important job in the world. And it's completely unfair what they get paid for what they do. So I learned that teachers are absolutely key, and providing tools to teachers, it is very important. And they don't always have the correct tools to teach.
Emmy, that means a lot to me. My mother's a public school teacher in Miami-Dade. And it's really interesting because it sounds like you built the tools kind of reverse engineering the needs of the actual teachers. And that's what gave you that adoption, because you essentially built a marketing team or a marketing army in these instructors that were saying, this is really useful for me to be able to break through and teach these kids in a way that is going to increase engagement, in a way that's going to actually be meaningful to these kids. Am I right in saying that part of the success story, the scale of the company, was because teachers just became raving fans of the product?
100%. And that's why I'm saying that teachers are the best, because in the other industries, I mean, the incentives are different. Nobody becomes a teacher, I don't know, I mean, to sell stocks, right? They want to help others. That's what's the main concept of a teacher. And that's why they go into education school. They want to help kids and they want to help other teachers. And when they find something that is really valuable, they don't care in which school you teach, in what districts you are, what's your whatever. They just want to help out. So we were benefited by that the teachers loved our platform, and they were not shy about telling other teachers about our platform. So the growth was exponential, in partially thanks for that personality of the teachers, and also because we knew coming in that we didn't know much about education, and we needed the teachers to tell us what the platform was lacking. So being close to the consumer, in this case, the teacher were not paying, but the teachers are the ones telling us what was needed. That was absolutely key. And the other also important part is that we never had the intention of charging teachers. We wanted to charge the school or the district, because we knew, even though teachers will go out of their world and they pay for themselves to things that students might need, and that we thought that's completely unfair. So we don't want to take money from teachers, but we want teachers to help us sell to the school or district if they think that this is a tool that the students will benefit from. But that was very clear from the beginning that we were not going to get revenue from teachers.
So this feels almost like a reunion, because I was checking before we started recording. 4 years, almost to the day ago, we had a panel for Refresh on growing beyond seed stage, and both Will and Emmy were, 2 of the 4 panelists on there. So it's great to kind of have everyone back together. And I remember that night, Max from Caribou was actually pitching kind of before the panel started. And so I would love to get, Emmy, your take on, it seems like there's a lot of ed tech startups coming out of South Florida right now, and would love to kind of hear your kind of take on why that, a lot of startups here are tackling that industry, and what you think could Miami be kind of a center for ed tech startups?
I wish. I mean, I don't know why, but I'm happy that it's happening. A lot has changed in the last 10 years since we started, and those changes are good changes. We're seeing a lot more investors, we're seeing a lot more startups, we're seeing money coming in. And also the fact that location is not as relevant as it used to be 20 years ago. Today, starting a company anywhere in the US, it's normal. And probably 20, 15 years ago, if you were not in the Valley, it was tough to raise and grow exponentially. So those are 2 things that are very positive. And also, I mean, Miami, with the low taxes and with the moderate cost of living, I mean, I cannot say the low cost of living anymore, but it is moderate and low compared to San Francisco and New York. And the weather, and so it is an amazing city to live in and enjoy, and then build a company.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I have a question for you, Emmy. As far as technology and education goes, things, obviously, it's hard to compare in a COVID world because everything went sideways, and we obviously became very entrenched on our devices, and our kids spend more time digitally on devices than ever before. But things are getting back to normal. most of the world will be vaccinated soon. Just curious on your thoughts on the role technology plays in the future of childhood education, because there is a stigma, right? Some people have that screen time needs to be limited only to a certain part of the day, and trying to kind of protect our kids from too much screen time. This is a controversial topic. I know that I lean more so on the other side of things, that technology is healthy, that we're preparing our kids for a future where technology is a mainstay in their life and they need to be exposed to it early on. But I'm curious your thoughts. Maybe also in the early days of NearPod, did you get blowback from some folks that were kind of anti-technology? And do you see that narrative now changing and more people are coming around to it?
Our philosophy has always been that we need to limit the screen time of the kids. As a parent, I'm fighting that battle every day, like I'm assuming every parent is. And we try to minimize the amount of time that our kids are in front of a screen. And from the moment zero, we in NearPod communicated that message that screens are not there to be used 100% of the time. A lot of the lessons that we deliver are within a blended model, that they will do some things on the screen and then they will go out of the screen and do some things without the screen and then come back. We think that the technology we created is used to increase engagement, participation, and provide more data points for the teachers to understand how the students are learning and correct and assess and reassess and personalize instruction. And if they do that with 20 minutes of screen time, that's even better. So the less screen time, but without the screens, it was not possible to do it before. How would you know how 100% of the students are learning in real time and react? So our software, depending on the results of the class, can create tasks or homework that are personalized. If you did exercise 1, 2, 3 wrong, you need to work on those. So think about that. Most of the schools today still send the same homework to all the kids, regardless of their levels, right? So here's a math homework for everybody. Well, but some people are already well advanced. Some people are struggling to understand the main concept. You should tailor and personalize instruction a little bit more. So there's a lot of software tools that can improve the education outcome if used correctly. But again, I'm never going to fight those that says that we need to limit the screen time.
Yeah, I know that's a hot topic. Thanks for bringing that up, Will. Back to the company really quick. You said it was really hard to raise money in Silicon Valley in the early days. Did you have folks that were coming back to you after they passed saying, "Hey, please let me in the cap table, like you guys are taking off"? And do you have those emails that you want to share with friends these days?
No, I don't see it that way. I mean, yes, obviously we had people coming back, but at that time, those assumptions were correct, and we learned a lot from those. I mean, the fact that we cannot sell to districts and that you need to have credibility in the industry to sell to districts, those are true. And thanks to those assumptions, we were able to create a bottoms-up go-to-market strategy and how our product launched in the grassroots and marketing grassroots and all that. So we are very thankful for that feedback. It's not that we have any animosity to those people. That helped us a lot shape the company. Important also to mention, during the Series A, we were very conscious about building a company in Miami. We didn't want to move to the Valley. There are 3 founders, and we decided that one of us will move to Silicon Valley, and that was Guido. Felipe and I stayed here and built the company here, and for that reason, we stopped at some point raising money there and started raise here, so we could have a balance of investors, both from Silicon Valley and from Miami. And that helped us a lot because the Miami community at the beginning helped us a lot getting contacts and employees and connections. So the ecosystem, the tech ecosystem, it was not where it is today, 10 years ago, but it was a very close community that helped us a lot. We couldn't have done it without the help of the people that trusted us at the beginning. So we're going to be forever grateful for the Miami people that trusted us. And I'm speaking with all of the shareholders these days, and that's the thing, is that we are thankful, because when they invested, we didn't have revenues, and it was just a PowerPoint and an idea, and then we only had the initial traction. And most of the investors stayed with us for a long time, so that we will never forget that trust. For us, for us is worth a lot.
That's such a great answer, and it really shows the humility that you have as a co-founder. Because I mean, I was wondering whether those were the letters of the investors that passed behind you on the wall there, whether that motivated you or not. But no, your answer was much better. Thank you. I mean, anything else you want to share with the Miami Tech Pod listeners on the future of NearPod or your experiences building it here before we wrap?
I would say to anybody who's in Miami doing technology these days is that get familiar with the community. The community is growing a lot, and it will continue to grow. It's a very close and friendly community, and everybody is trying to help each other. And I mean, when I was asked many times, how do you compare Miami with Silicon Valley, since we had both experiences, is probably in Miami, you're not going to get the crazy valuations at the beginning, but there are not many other startups to compete with for money, right? So it is a great balance. I would say to the people starting, reach out, I mean, network and get to know the people, because the ecosystem here is very entrepreneur friendly, and everybody's trying to help. And we are going to be helping startups as well, become mentors or investors, or whoever needs a hand. Will be happy to give back to the Miami community, helping other entrepreneurs. So that would be my advice. Don't be shy and reach out, and you're gonna get help.
Awesome. Emmy, thank you so much for joining the Miami Tech Pod. As you know, feel free to reach out as you have additional news and want to share it with our audience. And we'll be rooting for you. I think this is one of the really cool success stories locally for folks that are inspired to build companies here in Miami and have that pressure of trying to chase investments versus really just putting your head down and sticking to it and really growing. So congratulations on all the success, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more from you soon.
Perfect. Thank you guys for the opportunity.
Bye, Emmy. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmy. Appreciate it, man.
That was always great to hear from Emmy. And so I want to move on to some other big news in Miami Tech. The announcement by Knight this week that they'll be investing $15.3 million across 3 different initiatives in the community. I believe it was $10 million to FIU to build out their School of Computer Science by growing the faculty and student body by nearly 70%. University of Miami received $4.3 million to support the growth of the Institute for Data Science and Computing. And then the last $1 million went to Baptist Health, South Florida, to launch the Knight Foundation Fellowship in Healthcare Technology Innovation. So that was a mouthful. But really exciting news, I think, for the future of Miami Tech and growing out our talent here. As a employee, Brian, any thoughts on this announcement?
I mean, look, I think this is a great sign for South Florida. It's basically answering to the big question that everyone keeps, floating of, like, where's the talent? Does Miami have enough talent to support the growth of the ecosystem, and so on? And I think for FIU especially, this is going to be a huge leap forward in, establishing a more nationally recognized computer science department. I mean, they're already the largest, or I think top 4 in the country as far as number of engineering and computer science engineering graduates in the country by volume of students. And I think this will give them the tools and the resources in order to better recruit, top tier professors and top tier resources that they wouldn't have been able to afford otherwise, right? And so, this is a great step. I think this hopefully we'll see more of these types of investments, not just by Knight. I think we need to get all the other local billionaires to start moving some of their bags over into the higher ed and K through 12 space too. You know, I'd love to see the I don't know, the Keith Roboy School for Computing, K through 12 or something like that. You know,
Brian putting Keith on notice. This is
I mean, what's a few million to, you know, educate the next generation of Miami, computer scientists or entrepreneurs or whatnot.
Yeah, no, I think that's important. Will, I mean, when you were building Live Ninja, how was your experience kind of hiring engineers? I mean, I don't know how big your team was, but what did you find that it was challenging to tap into really good engineering talent locally?
So I personally never felt that. I was always on the other side of this argument that Miami has talent. And in particular, you know, obviously boot camps like WinCode and IronHack like really help solve that problem, especially on like junior and mid-level developers. Senior devs is a different story. And, you know, usually senior devs, they end up relocating, especially at that time, you had to relocate for other jobs in Silicon Valley and in New York, because those were where the really high paying jobs from an engineering standpoint were.
Yeah, this is, you know, building into our future growth, right? Like we have the current talent right now, but if we're growing the startup community here 10x in a very short amount of time, eventually it's going to be kind of all dried up really quickly, and we need to like
Correct.
backfill some of that demand for these jobs.
Correct. That's where we need to do a better job with our homegrown talent, much to what like Lucy said on the previous episode, with, you know, nurturing our homegrown talent and the folks that are here, keeping them here and making sure that we give them the right resources to succeed. And that starts K through 12, you know, and getting the foundation ready for them to take advantage of these opportunities at FIU and UM. So it's a holistic approach, and initiatives like this from the Knight Foundation are going to go a long way. So that's really exciting.
You know, I'm going to add something here. I think that we need to push our listener community to be more involved with their local school system at the K through 12 level, because we have a lot of really talented individuals that listen to this podcast, maybe millions of them. I'm not sure, give or take, you know, but I think these folks need to go in there and start, like, go to their local schools and start volunteering and mentoring and things like that, because there's a lot of great knowledge built up in the brains of, you know, Miami Tech Pod listeners, who I've heard may be the smartest people in South Florida by and large.
I mean, they make great podcast listening decisions. So
yeah, and that's what I'm basing that assumption on, that they made that one great decision to listen to us. So they must be making tons of other great decisions in life too.
Facts.
The next great decision will be to subscribe and rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
Boom. All right, Will, you have the next topic, which I think is really exciting. Can you tell me what an NFT is?
Sure. So if you're in the tech space, you've obviously got wind of the NFT craziness that's been happening over the past few weeks. I'd say in the last 30 days, it's really kind of taken a life of its own. NFT stands for non-fungible token. Basically, at a high level, this makes things on the internet ownable, is a way to think about it, right? For the first time ever, you are able to have scarcity to digital items, to say this item on the internet, this file, this video, this image is a 1 of 1 or a 1 of 50 or a 1 of 100. You can have scarcity to what, you know, people would usually think of as, I could just take a screenshot of that same picture and have that screenshot. But it, much like in the real world, you can go to the Louvre and take a picture of the Mona Lisa. You don't have ownership of the Mona Lisa. You could also have an artist, a really damn good artist, make a 1 of 1 replica of the Mona Lisa. You still don't own the original Mona Lisa. So these principles are now be applying to the web through NFTs. And essentially what it does is it takes blockchain technology, which the original application of blockchain is cryptocurrency. And blockchain, you could run lots of different apps on, right? The original application, the most used application for blockchain is cryptocurrencies, right? But now there's this other big application use case, and it's for NFTs, which basically allows you to assign ownership, transparent ownership on the blockchain to digital items. And when you think that that's now a possibility, you can imagine all the opportunities that opens up. Once people start to digest, and it's happening now in masses, literally hundreds of thousands of people per day are starting to shift their mind to thinking digital ownership is something I want. I want digital ownership of this piece of art. And as more and more people get educated into it, this market's going to be massive. So you see it happening now in art. You see it happening in photography. You see it happening with like NBA Top Shot, which is kind of like the trading cards. If the trading card space were to go online, NBA Top Shot would be an equivalent to that. I mean, we saw things early on, like CryptoKitties and CryptoPunks were kind of like proof of concepts. But now we've gone mainstream. NBA Top Shot, that's a major sports league, you know, here in the US, has gone in on NFTs. And that's opening it up to a world of people that aren't just crypto speculators and blockchain speculators.
Can we pause for a second there? Because I think that's a really important commentary on the NBA in general as an organization and as a league. They're really at the forefront of everything, right?
They're really good with that.
They're so good with, like, you know, every single sports league was like anti-gambling, and they were really the first to say, well, look, we're going to embrace it. The fact is that tens of millions of people wager bets on sports outcomes, and we're just going to take our head out of the sand and pretend and stop pretending that it's not happening here and lean in, right? We're seeing this now with NFTs. Kudos to the NBA for, you know, being forward thinking.
Yeah, and the UFC is following suit. UFC is going to be the next one up. There's a soccer. There's a company called So Rare that just announced funding that they're doing like the Euro soccer leagues. This is here in a big way. So there will be multi-billion-dollar companies created in this space over the next decade. And, you know, you need to think about what can be done or what's being done in the real physical world that has so much opportunity now if you translate it to digital, and all of the efficiencies that can lead to, and all the cooler experiences, frankly, that could lead to. Because once you put it into ones and zeros, right, you could do anything digitally. Some limitations to what we could put on a piece of cardboard, right? But digital.
Now we know what Brian's been up to.
That's right. This podcast is actually an NFT owned by Brian.
It is. There's one of one. The marketplace is down right now, so it's not very liquid. But, you know, there's an interesting aspect to how NBA Top Shot, you know, and all this craze. Like I was talking to someone yesterday, and they were like, "Well, what's the point of this? What's the value of this?" Right? And like, as a economics fan, I said, "Well, the value is that someone else is willing to pay X plus one, you know, for this, and that's, you know, because what's the value of a diamond? They're not rare. You know, you can manufacture artificial ones, and they're just as good as the real ones. So, like, I think the interesting thing here with Top Shot, though, is like they have actually laced some utility into this by making like these games and these challenges and things like that, where you need to collect certain ones, and that drives up the speculation around those and the you know, the scarcity and all that stuff. It all plays together. Like, they've learned a lot from their first foray into CryptoKitties, you know. And I think, I mean, look, this is also sort of a self-perpetuating thing where the value of these things keeps going up because there's more hype, and then there's fewer and fewer of them. And, you know, like, I mean, it's insanity, the returns that we've seen some people get on their Top Shot collections from just 3 months ago, you know.
I feel like this craze, though, accelerated faster than most craze. Am I right about that? Like, this was fast
for sure. But this is also like the internet. Everything is moving at internet speed now. Like, Maria was collecting Beanie Babies in middle school, you know, but she didn't have the internet then to like start auctioning them off in real time, and now she does. So, was
that your side hustle, Maria?
No, but I was obsessed with the Littlest Pet Shop toys. Not as much Beanie Babies.
Did you sell it?
Those didn't take off as much. They might still be in my mom's attic. I'm really not sure.
Yeah, you gotta flip those on eBay.
Yeah.
I'm curious how and what good condition they might be after 20 years of being in a hot Florida attic. You know, They might be a melted puddle of plastic by this point.
So my question is, is there, can we pinpoint anything that made them particularly take off more recently? Because it sounds like they've been around for a bit.
Well, I think the first ones really started kind of, popping their head out at 2017. This was right when I think CryptoPunks was the original NFT. That's why you see them so valuable. There was 10,000 of them made. So now people are paying crazy amounts of money for them. It's kind of like a collector's item to have one of these things. Then CryptoKitties, I think, was the biggest mainstream one. They put these kitties on Ethereum blockchain, ended up basically clogging the entire network and got a lot of notoriety for that. So it was like 2017, 2018 when things just started bubbling up. And much like anything in technology, you have the early evangelists, right? The folks that see it early on and are interested in it and what it could possibly be. And then it takes a while for the mainstream to adopt it. Now, what happened is, I think, a number of things. You had COVID, obviously, and everybody stayed home and investments became cool. Robinhood, stock trading, all of these things became more open to the masses. So people were now more willing. And then also the rise of trading cards was also a huge market that happened during COVID. So you had all of this money coming into the investment market or the speculative investment market, whether it was trading cards or stocks and that kind of thing. And crypto obviously was a big part of that too. Crypto obviously had a big year. So it only took, there was this bonfire that was happening, and all it took was one major IP with millions and millions of fans to make really the blockchain part of it irrelevant, because I think the majority of folks into Top Shot don't really care first and foremost that it's on blockchain. They get educated on it after the fact and they like it. But really, folks came into this through the NBA's IP and the NBA's co-partnership with Dapper Labs. And now that is the entry point to the awareness of NFTs. So I think that's like the gateway drug, so to speak, into the rest of the world. And now folks are really keen on what other avenues they could be on. Like Brian said, if you invested in Top Shot 4 or 5 months ago, you're sitting on a really nice return. So folks are looking, what's the next one I can invest in, right? How can I get in early? And again, there's the flywheel that Brian talked about. You're doing your research now. You're trying to get into these communities. There is literally 5 NFT clubhouse rooms going on at any particular time, at any particular point. The community is really active. So I would say those are the trends that led us here.
But Will, I think the key thing though is like, what was the inflection point, right? That's what Maria was asking, because the NBA has yet to actually promote it themselves officially.
I don't know. I slightly disagree. I think the inflection point was still Top Shot, and I think
no. But I mean, Top Shot's been around since like September, October at least, right?
Yeah, but
it didn't really take off until mid-January of this year, right? And so, who was the influencer who was like, I'm buying a bunch of Top Shots, and then tweeted it out? Like, was it who's the Dave Portnoy?
I don't think it was
Top
any.
Shot.
I'm sure if you asked them, they would point to a lot of specific moments where like it started going up at like little staircases basically on the graph. It was a combination of things.
What is, for a lot of these things, you need sort of a mainstream or semi-mainstream example that you can learn from, or that's a lot of times it's just the communication of it, right? Because the concept of NFT could have been around for the last 7 years or 6 years easily. A lot of them were running on Ethereum and didn't have their own proprietary blockchains, right, like Top Shot, and so but the thing is, until you see something like sort of visualized in a way that resonates with you, a lot of times these technologies just fly over your head because it's hard to wrap your head around them.
And Top Shot was really the first NFT that didn't make you pay in Ether. You could actually buy it in US dollars, and that was like a big thing, that you could actually go with your credit card and buy an NFT. Like, can you imagine telling your cousin, like, go buy this, and then all of a sudden you're just like, okay, but I got to set up a MetaMask wallet and I got to send Ether to the MetaMask wallet. It was a really complicated process before, and that was the first time you could just go and buy it. So I think that was a huge inflection point. And then you combine that with the fact that it's a major IP and it's something folks are already collecting, which are basketball trading cards in the physical space. Then you just started having little influencer moments here. And I'm not talking about like big celebrities. I'm talking about like people with like 10,000 followers on Twitter, Okay, here's a little rumbling, and then somebody else with more followers, here's a little rumbling, and then all of a sudden there's YouTube channels about it, and you bring in the speculative investment crowd, and now it's off into the races, because now basketball players are trying to collect their own moments and doing live streams on Twitch about it. So it's going nuts. And of course, you saw ESPN picked it up. Every major news outlet has picked it up. So it's here in a big way.
Yeah, that's what I'm excited about, to see how this changes behavior, because people know that they're essentially creating an NFT,
right,
or content that could be an NFT in the actual moment of it.
Right.
The other thing I'd love to learn more about is how this is going to change the area of IP and property law, right? I mean, there's for a lot of, for years, the arbiter of whether you own something were courts, right, and contracts.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're essentially taking all of those institutions out of the equation and really just replacing them with the blockchain. And it's exciting, but that friction is going to be really interesting, because I know a lot of lawyers, they'll fight this, right? Like there's no question that there's going to be some disputes around whether or an additional area of law created, right? One or the other.
I think that's what you'll see. I think you have a massive opportunity in those spaces to adopt this for more efficient trademarking, more efficient copyright, applications and things like that. Like anything can be kind of tokenized and give you a more efficient way to do that. So your mind just starts spinning with all the opportunities. If this is starting to get adopted, and people just start coming around to the mindset that, it doesn't matter if it's digital or physical, it's just as valid.
If I was a law student right now,
Yep.
like a 2L or 3L, I would be focusing on crypto, digital privacy, and sort of modern IP law. I think those three things, and you'd have a career for the next 20 years. And the next 5 years, you'd be banking it, because no one else understands this, especially the guys who graduated from law school in 1960.
Yeah, that's really smart. All right, well, let's keep this going. I think we're going to probably see some Miami NFT companies emerge here in the coming months, and we'll probably have a second bite at the apple in terms of this topic. But we'll wrap. And this was episode 9 of the Miami Tech Pod. Thank you all for tuning in. We want to thank Emmy for joining the pod. Really exciting stuff with NearPod and all of the news that they're making. And if you haven't already, please rate and subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app, and follow us on Twitter at Miami Tech Pod. Shout out to all the people following us on Twitter. I mean, our following has grown. We really, really appreciate it. And we will see you next week on episode 10.